How's it going, family? Let's see, let me get this lighting correct. I think that looks pretty good. Welcome to Medicine Monday. This is the second installment of Medicine Monday, and today we're going to talk about some impactful issues of shame and fear, and releasing those two things. Give me 1 second. Okay. Okay, yes. So thank you so much for your patience and just um thank you so much for your patience and just being here and walking this journey with me so far that I'm doing. I had some technical difficulties and some lighting difficulties that I'm still working through, but it's going to be okay. I'm just gonna say like this. So yes, today's Medicine Monday is entitled "Feelings Buried Alive Never Die." They teach, and it is really based off of this book by Carol K. Truman, "Feelings Buried Alive Never Die." Really going into the subject of identifying these core beliefs that we hold, um, and I really want us to connect here. So I will go in slowly into this topic and then expand into something in popular culture, and then reframe it back in terms of a spiritual um, wisdom text. And I'm using the Christian Bible as the spiritual text, often because that is what many people are most familiar with. So let's jump in. So again, the title of this talk is "Feelings Buried Alive Never Die, They Teach." And I want to start by addressing the elephant in the room. Then, what are feelings? So, Carol K. Truman defines feelings as one, to perceive or be aware through thought, bodily or emotional reactions, instinct, etc. Two, to produce an indicated overall condition, impression, or reaction. Three, the affective, which means causing emotions or feelings, aspect of mental life as distinguished from thought and from the intellectual aspects. Four, an impression produced upon a person having a sensation. And lastly, five, marked by or indicating emotions. A simple definition for me are of feelings is the energy that causes one to react to one's external or the external the environment outside of you, or internal the environment inside of you, um, based on based on how you see the world. Though that is what a feeling is to me. It's the energy that causes change within the world you live in, the outside world, and the world you inhabit, that you live in, which is also inside of you. So how can we get to the core of this feeling, the feelings that we have, so we can live the kind of life we want to live? First, we have to go to the source of our feelings, and I'm going to be slow at this so that we can get a proper grounding. So the first way to get at the root or the core of what we feel is go to the source of those things. Often, how we feel about the world, how we feel about ourselves, is really rooted into the earliest experiences we have in life. And where do those experiences come from? These experiences often come from our childhood. And as Truman talks about in her book, it's thought that we form the basic beliefs about the world um, from those early experiences. So we decide on how we feel about ourselves based off the early experiences we have. Um, the second the second point to getting to the root of how we feel is seeing how what we think connects to what we feel. And what does this mean? So everything that we do has a, um, a connected emotion that guides us. For example, um, and when we talk about an emotion like happiness, we we the thing that we do that is um, fueled by happiness might be something that we like, which brings us happiness. So how we feel goes with an action which creates our life. Um, Within that, if when we see that deeper emotion that guides our actions, we need to just acknowledge that there is some feeling behind what we do. And when we notice those feelings, we don't want to make judgments about what those feelings are. All we need to do is notice that feeling. Just notice those feelings without judgment. And there's no need to do anything with that feeling, um, because we want to be mindful that whatever feelings we have, we can transform or change those feelings into something that's productive. What we call those feelings negative or not useful or positive or useful, we can make those unuseful feelings or none or those feelings that are not useful. So in that noticing, like we just learn to just be, and those negative feelings don't have to take root in our lives. So as we just be, it helps us to kind of go slower in that emotion to action to life creation path. So, and the last point of how we get to the core of what we feel is by us seeing those beliefs, a lot of these beliefs that are handed down to us from other people, our community, and society really are illusions. They're not based on our truest self or the source. I call that God from where those from where those aspects of your truest self really come from. Like your truest self is really who you are. It's that part of you that you were born, that you were put together by the Creator to work and work from in this life. And it's when we go through the muck of life that we redefine or limit our truest self and mold that truest self into something lesser, into something that other people want their self to be. And that's where a lot of these negative emotions come from, because when we're changing ourselves to meet a condition of someone else, we're getting outside of the authenticity or the realness of who we are. And earlier I said I would talk about two dominant dominant feelings um, that people deal with, that I've dealt with, and I'm going to contextualize that in society through popular culture, and then also going to frame that within a spiritual wisdom tradition, and I'm using the Christian Bible. So, what is my personal connection to shame and fear? To be real, it took me about the first 25 years of my life shedding those feelings of shame and fear about who I am. I had a lot of shame about a lot of different things, but one of the largest sources of shame for me was that I was not the kind of man that my community and the larger society needed me to be. And and this was really based on my sexuality. And we and as I think about that, some of the beliefs that I had about my sexuality was like, oh, it is not right. I had these feelings that I tried to submerge, that I tried to repress. But as I was repressing them, they were still speaking to me. And I realized through walking with people in therapy and prayer and conversation and building a relationship with God as I understand God, that there was nothing wrong with me. That I had to go back to that Genesis or truest self that came with me, and really reconcile with the fact that who I am, and that includes my sexuality, was natural and normal for me, and to act within that truth of me and let other people be okay with that truth. Because for so long I had hid those parts of myself and my sexuality I'm talking about, um, without really doing the work of just being myself. Excuse me, it's like some background noise, so I'm a bit distracted. Okay, um, and as it relates to my shame of being the right kind of man, I realized that there was a box that I needed to open and unravel and reform back into something that really aligned with my truest self. And we know someone in the popular light who has dealt with the same sort of shame, um, based on who he is. So recently, Lil Nas X released a video called Montero, and about basically him. To me, his trials being himself in the rejection that came from people, and him finally defeating that trauma and that rejection in the form of him slaying the devil, literally. Uh, and so I had to slay that my own sort of devil in my life by changing that narrative, that by changing that narrative that was handed to me. Um, and so Lil Nas X, I think, really made this video to change that narrative, to confront that trauma he had being rejected for his sexuality, and hiding the parts of himself to make people okay. Um, excuse me, I'm gonna drink some water. Um, and in exploring this concept of shame, right? I'm gonna talk about the environment that Lil Nas X was in, and I'm going to talk about like this feeling of captivity, which leads to. Uh, I'm going to talk about this feeling of shame, which leads to captivity, and do it like that. So for Lil Nas X, I said little. For Lil Nas X, his shame was really prompted by childhood rejection. We can definitely see that in the letter he wrote himself, uh, and um, in the letter he writes himself, his childhood self, he talks about like overcoming that feeling of shame and basically affirming that he's okay in who he is. And again, the major feeling behind shame is that I'm a bad person, that something is very wrong with me about a part of um, who I am. Um, and within Lil Nas's Lil Nas X's environment, definitely what possibly um, what possibly formed his shame was his family. I'm sure they told him, Montero, that's Lil Nas X's real name, Montero Hill. This is how you should be. You should not be a queer man. Uh, you should stop listening to the devil. Or whatever that means, and you should just be as how we say. And this family message probably was echoed in the church, and I'm sure every Sunday he heard from the pews. This is what makes a man worthy in the eyes of God. Like he's heterosexual. He is married to a woman. He has kids and a white picket fence, and you know um, X, Y, and Z. Um, and within all of that, those messages, I'm sure, made Lil Nas X feel ashamed of who he was, and that to me put him and people like him and me in a place of captivity to the expectations of the people that we were around. And we know that, or I should say, captivity leads to denial. Denial is when we refuse to accept those parts of us because of the shame we carry. And with that, denial leads to the rejection of the self. So shame is that feeling. Denial is, you know, connected to that feeling, and then denial leads to the rejection of the self, which is the action that happens when one chooses shame. So similar to Lil Nas X, um, I want to talk about um, another um, prominent emotion or prominent feeling of fear. Fear is something that we all, or most of us, go through, and definitely myself, Little Nas X, uh, I believe chose to hide parts of himself based on fear as well, seeing that fear, um, that fear that was present was connected to his fear of rejection. So I really want to contextualize this talk about feelings in spiritual wisdom texts. And again, for me, that's the Bible. So I want to talk about Jonah. Often, I grew up hearing stories about, Jonah being in the whale, and Jonah refusing to go to Nineveh because of his dislike of those people in that place. And what in my reading of the text, what's often missed and how people talk about that is fear, and how Jonah was trying to dodge the fear of a new environment. And Nineveh was not a place that um, Jonah wanted to go. And we can see this all throughout the 4 short chapters in the book of Jonah. Um, and this fear, I believe that Jonah had, caused Jonah some anxiety, so much so that, like in that book, we see all sorts of metaphors for the anxiety and fear and just despair. And Jonah probably dealt with this fear of the unknown, his anxieties in all his life, until the story reads that God puts him in the water, in the belly of a whale, so he could process his feelings. For many of us, we treat feelings as like a great open sea. Feelings are this thing that we feel like we can't really get our hands around. We can't process because we live in a society that does not prioritize the processing of feelings, the identification of feelings, or any of that. But sometimes God puts us in the water. God wants us to get in the water of our feelings so that we can have the sort of life that we are meant to have. And sometimes God puts us in a situation where we have to confront our fear, and in that confronting our fear, God will put us in a place of safe landing for us to do that work. So for Jonah, that was literally a whale. But if you think of a whale, it's also something that's great. It's something that's, or I think the Bible says a whale, which some people take to mean a large fish. But in this um, in this place of being surrounded by this darkness inside of that large fish or the whale, Jonah had time to process. And like Jonah being in that dark place of processing, sometimes when we process our emotions, those those that place can seem dark because it's something that is uncomfortable to us. But in that processing, that's where we also find our strength and our clarity to finish that process, and so we can heal. Um, and I wanted to say also, when we see life as more than the sum of our fears, things began to shift. I imagine Jonah in that whale, full of fears. And as Jonah began to breathe in the belly of that whale, the mouth of that whale opening, and Jonah seeing the light of Nineveh ready to walk there. And I really wanna stop that story there, because and go back to Jonah's origin, where Jonah was from. He probably was comfortable You know, the people looked like him, spoke like him, shared the same interests as he did. And the people in Nineveh were just too different for his own comfort. And some of us um, may may uh, may look at life um, and feel that the those new experiences, whatever new experience that is in life, may be too much to bear. But what I'm saying is that when we press ourselves to that point of discomfort, whatever that discomfort is, we often tend to grow and find new life and greater life in that discomfort. So I really want to push us to be uncomfortable, to be in a place of discomfort in our emotions so that we can get the resolve and the healing that we need. So I want to, let's see, I want to, I want to go back and reframe Lil Nas X's video in the context of his feelings and the trauma that uh, he had. To me, a lot of what has been missed in watching this, in people's discussion of Montero, is I've and as I've watched this video several times, I've noticed some things that I want to share. I believe that Lil Nas X knows he's loved by God. Walk with me. In taking us back to his Garden of Eden, Lil Nas is taking us metaphorically to the beginning of his trauma, the environment that or where he learned safety was captivity, and from this uh, from this learning, he chose to hide some parts of himself to be accepted by his community around him. And in that acceptance, and really that false acceptance, because they were not accepting his truest self, they were accepting a self that they needed. Uh, as he was hiding parts of himself to be accepted by his community around him, to gain love somewhere, he had to um, accept it in that trading of his true self from for that self they wanted him to be. That he was a not that being himself was not enough to survive in the environment that he was. In slaying the devil in the video Montero, what Little Nas X said, what Little Nas X is doing is also slaying the belief that other people have a hell to put him in defining himself what it means to fall from grace, from his grace, or a grace built on the unconditional love of others. How many of us walk around being what other people want us to be, being the thing that people need us to be so that we could please them and get the love that we want from them? How many of us do things just because we know that if we continue doing these things that people want us to do, that they'll be happy and maybe we'll be loved? And how many of us have had to hide aspects of ourselves to be loved? What people miss in the video Montero is not, this is a video not only about Lil Nas's, Lil Nas X's sexuality, it's also about the freedom of selfhood. What if in our early lives, notwithstanding sexuality, we had the ability to, we had the ability to be all of the person we were meant to be. I would imagine our life trajectory would be different. Um, and in closing, I want to say the thing I always say in these talks, whether it's Medicine Monday or Freedom Friday. We all have the power to act. And in that choosing something different, we can have a greater life. That's where freedom resides. We can redefine what being looks like us, being our truest self, being in the integrity of who we are, and doing the thing that is in line with who we are. In both Little Nas, in both Lil Nas X and Jonah's case, uh, this really is surrounded in the context of what being a man looks like. Maybe Lil Nas X thought being a man meant that he couldn't hold the sexuality, the queer sexuality that he holds. And I'm here to tell you that being a man is more than the boxes we're given. Being a woman is more than the boxes we're given. Being a non binary person, literally, is being more than the box we're given. But this is also true of all the boxes that people hand us. I'm repeating myself by saying this, but this is also true for all the other boxes that people hand to us, like the binary of so many other uh, identities. Do we have to be direct, or do we have to, be passive? Do we have to be someone who is uh, outspoken only, or can we also be someone who's very sensitive and intuitive? We can escape these limiting beliefs that we have and start creating our own healing. We can live the kind of life, the kind of abundant life where self love is always there for us to take from. As we return to our own beginning, where, as we return to our own beginning, where will we find our child self? What's there, and what can we learn from that place? Lil Nas X credited Montero, his music video, as a monument to his own healing from years of rejection he faced as a child. We know this because of the letter he wrote to his child self. Will you write a letter to that child in you who, for whatever reason, also denied parts of themselves in order to gain other people's love, in order to gain your family's love, in order to gain your church community's love? Will you write a letter to your childhood self, like, uh, like Little Nas X did? What feelings in your sorry, give me one second. What feelings in the childhood environment you came up in made you hide parts of yourself so people would love you? I want to leave us with this. You can't make people love you. You can only receive the love that people freely are willing to give in your truest self. And you can love yourself as you are, as the person God made you. You can't do or be enough to get love. Love is offered by grace. We can choose to love ourselves and receive love um, as we have the capacity to receive it. Jonah and Lil Nas X have a common worldview. They both believe, they both chose to believe in a way that seemed more safe for them than the way where freedom lives. The freedom to be the way where shame or fear no longer shapes their every move, your every move, my every move, our every move in the world. There's a freedom beyond shame and fear. Will you be bold enough to find that within you? This is the Freedom Doctor with Medicine Monday, and I hope that this message blesses you, and I hope that you find your freedom so you can heal today. Peace.